Theatre this afternoon and to our next end written presentation. Very happy to see so many of you taking time to join me here in the theatre, and the presentation that I'm about to do is going to be all about sailing. Any sailors out there? A few of you. Anybody who have been on a sailboat? All right, maybe both. Well, yeah, anybody who's been on a ship? Yeah, should have been everybody. Very good. Now, what I'm about to talk for this presentation is, of course, it is my personal presentation that I've been doing now for about 7 years or so, actually. Time does fly. But about 8 years ago, I had an opportunity to go sailing on a boat, the boat that you just saw in the little opening video. And that journey that we took was 8 months in total length, and we sailed from Panama to Australia. And there was 5 of us on board, and in this presentation, I'll be sharing lots of the stories from the high seas, and also furthermore bringing lots of my personal perspective, if you will, to when it comes to traveling, when it comes to world and cultures and even people, if you will. But to get properly started, I do want to show you another quick video, an opening video, which quite nicely shows in a couple of minutes of pretty much the things that I'll be talking within this presentation. So please draw your attention to the screens, as here we go.
Everybody gonna dance tonight. Everybody gonna feel alright. Everybody gonna dance around tonight. Everybody gonna dance around. Everybody gonna hit the ground. Everybody gonna dance around tonight. Well, you can come on to my place if you want to. You can do anything you want to do. Everybody gonna dance tonight. Everybody gonna feel alright. Everybody gonna dance around tonight. Well, you can come on to my place if you want to. You can do anything you want to do. Everybody's gonna stamp their feet. Everybody's gonna feel the beat. Everybody's gonna dance around tonight. Everybody's gonna dance tonight. Everybody's gonna feel alright. Everybody's gonna dance around tonight. Yeah, everybody's gonna jump and shout. Everybody's gonna sing it out. Everybody's gonna dance around tonight. Well, you can come on to my place if you want to. You can do anything you want to do. Everybody's gonna dance tonight. Everybody's gonna feel alright. Everybody's gonna dance around tonight. Everybody's gonna dance around.
So there we go. How did it look like? Was fun? Well, thank you. It was a fun, great journey altogether, and I must say as well, on a personal note, I feel that it was a very life-changing journey as well, and I hope that after the presentation you'll understand why I do say so. And like I mentioned before, it is my personal presentation, and I will be bringing lots of my personal perspectives in these presentations forward, and therefore I do want to mention a couple of things about myself, and I hope that those open up a little bit of who I am and, so to speak, where I come from For I would expect that many of you would have seen me performing on stage on this cruise when it comes to being a cruise director and when it comes to being a performer, which of course is one side, a big side of myself, but just one side of me. And with this presentation, it'll give me an opportunity to show you a little bit of the rest of it, if you will. And saying that, as a person, I go by with 3 great passions in my life, and those are passions that I try to follow up as much as I can wherever I go. And just quickly, those passions, my first one, and the original, if you will, education. I studied education back home in Finland, and I hold 2 degrees in it. I specialized in what we call adventure education or international relations. And the idea of it was always that I was always drawn to the idea of constructivism, meaning basically that knowledge and education comes through experience. The best way to attach information or teaching to a person is when you combine them with experience. And I always found that when you take yourself out from the normality, so to speak, whether it's through physical experience, like adventure, climbing, or any of that, or by social experience when it comes to languages, for example, and being in a different environment, I always found that it's a better way to connect to people, especially with kids and teens who I used to work with. So this is something that is a driving force of mine. I always try to bring people forward who are around me if it's within my power to do so. And that really is a driving force of mine. Now, my second great passion in life is what I do for a living. I can truly say that being a cruise director is really a dream come true for me. I feel very complete in this role, and I get to follow that passion on a nightly basis here in the theatre and, of course, around the ship as well when it comes to the entertainment management and, of course, meeting with all of you. But my third passion is the greatest one, and that's the one I try to follow as much as I can whenever I can, and it comes in 2 parts actually. It's very simple. It is traveling and learning. And I feel very strongly that those 2 things tend to go hand in hand, whatever you choose to do. And for me personally, I've been living the life of travel for about 12 years now, meaning that I've been traveling more around the world than being in one spot or back home in Finland. And when I started with that, I started enjoying not just going around and seeing places and doing the touristic stuff, but what I really enjoyed from it was when I was meeting people and I learned to understand. I learned to understand where I come from. I learned to understand my culture, how it is reflecting to the point of view of the world. And furthermore, through that reflection, I felt that I learned about myself. So I would say that I got addicted to that feeling of learning, of understanding why people do what they do. And I really feel that through travel, through immersing yourself in different cultures and languages, you can really start understanding that and furthermore yourself as well. But anyway, just as a quick nutshell of what drives me. And travel is something I try to do on all of my vacations, and I don't consider working on board cruise ship travel anymore. Yes, we are in different countries every day, but with the amount of work that's on board, that 2 hours just doesn't cut it, I must say. But anyway, so on my free time, I tend to do those bigger travels. Now, the presentation itself is going to be about the one particular travel, which of course was the sailing trip I took with a bunch of friends of mine about that 8 years ago now. And to start with that, first of all, the name of the boat that we were sailing with was called African Innovation. Now, African Innovation is a catamaran, and it was built in Durban in South Africa, and therefore the name of it. It's one of 5 of its kind at the time. And the size of the boat was about 43.5 feet, or 13 meters, and the width was about 7.5 feet, meters, or 25 feet. So not really the biggest boat out there, but for the 5 of us, really spacious enough. And furthermore, talking of the 5 of us, it actually was 8 people during that 8 months that were on board African Innovation. And just quickly to show you the people you'll be seeing in the presentation. First of all, Andreas Julseth was the owner and the captain of the boat. And for me personally, Andreas was also the reason why I ended up on this journey. For myself and Andreas, we were working on board one of our sister vessels on Vision of the Seas back in 2009, and I was a cruise director staff at the time in my first cruise director staff contract, while Andreas was a port and shopping guide, and we became friends very quickly. And this is something that happens, of course, on board quite often. As you can, I'm sure you can imagine that we, the crew members, when we do come on board, we already by default have certain kind of mentality. You know, we've left home behind and we are traveling, so the friendships and relationships are very easily merged on board the ships. So myself and Andreas, we got friends very quickly, and we realized that we share similar kind of ideology of the world. And after a while, Andreas told me that, Toby, you know what, I actually own a boat, and I'm planning to do this journey. Would you like to join me? To which I replied that, Andreas, that sounds amazing, but I've never sailed before. I've never been physically inside a sailing boat, but if that's not a problem, I'm in. And he said, no problem, I will teach you as we go. And I said, yes, let's go ahead and do it. And so from there, the decision was made, and then 9 months later, I quit my job in Royal Caribbean for the duration of the journey, and I joined Andres for the sailing. So that's the way I ended up on this journey. Now, other than that, we had Martin, who's Andres' brother, and then 2 friends of Martin, Elizabeth and Jacob, everybody from Norway so far. And then also myself as the 5th crew member with a little bit different look. When you let your hair down a little bit, it's a bit more clear on the side screens. Now, this is the first crew we had. With the 5 of us, we sailed from Panama to Tahiti. Then from Tahiti, we had a crew change where Jacob, Elizabeth, and Martin flew back home to Norway, for that was a time that they had to spend with us. And then they got replaced by Einar and Shasti. And then with the 4 of us, we sailed from Tahiti to Bora Bora, and from Bora Bora we picked up our final crew member, being Peter, who did something called the boat hop, but I'll get back to that once we reach Bora Bora. Now, talking of the destination, so we started out from Panama, as mentioned, and went to Galapagos Islands as our first major destination, then all the way to Marquesina Islands, the longest period of sea, right here, to Tuamotu Atolls, to Society Islands, Cook Islands, Nui, Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, and Australia, as Sydney being the final port of call. And those are the destinations. Most of them I'll do my best to bring you with. And talking of which, let's go ahead and start with Panama. Now, Panama was the first destination for us in a sense that Andreas sailed the boat over there. He had been sailing in the Caribbean for the past couple of months, and the rest of us, we flew to Panama. And for me personally, I flew first to Panama City, and from there I had to take a local bus, to go to Colón, which was on the Caribbean side. And the marina where we stayed was called Shelter Bay Marina, about 10 miles away from the city of Colón. And over there, of course, for the first couple of weeks, we did all our preparations for the sailing, with the maintenance and preparations like for the boats, and also provisionings. We provisioned with about $4,000 worth of supplies for the journey, which doesn't necessarily sound like that much when provisioning for 5 people for 8 months. But when purchased from Panama, the amount of food and provisions we were able to get with $4,000 was so much that we had to physically hire a full truck, a big truck, load all the stuff in the truck, drive it by the marina, unload it by the boat. And I still remember this day that there was people, other crew members from other boats, walking on by, laughing at us, saying, "You ain't never gonna fit all of that stuff to that small little boat of yours." But we showed them all, and we shoved it all in, and then, with no exaggeration, for the first 2 months, we walked like this inside, because it's just full. Every single crank and corner was just filled with beans and spaghetti and all of that. Now, so with the full boat, after about 3 weeks that we spent in Shelter Bay Marina, we started with crossing the canal. Of course, we had to get to the Pacific side. And how this works with the smaller vessels or smaller boats is that once you are ready to cross the canal, you give the go, so to speak, to the local authorities, and then they will wait until you have enough boats that can go at the same time. In our case, it was 9 boats in total that went through the canal at the same time. What you can see over here is when we are there with the boats, that you have the locks closing behind you. These are the first locks, Gatun locks, the first locks from Caribbean side. And of course the locks do close, and then the water level rises, and then you get to the next lock, and next lock, until you get to the Gatun Lake. Now, in Gatun Lake, we overnighted. For the duration of the operation was quite lengthy, so we overnighted in Gatun Lake, and it was quite curious actually. For you know that in these lakes, in this area, you have the freshwater crocodiles, right? The freshwater crocodiles. Now, I know it's scary, but we went swimming with the freshwater crocodiles. It was night time. We couldn't see a thing. It was deep in and out from the water, and now we checked the box. Swam with the crocodiles. we never saw them though. But we knew that they were there, but we had to take the shower. So quickly in and out. Anyways, now on the following morning, from the overnight in Gatun Lake, we went then through the Mayflower locks and the Pedro Miguel locks, of course, to get to the Pacific side. And then on the Pacific side, we stayed in Panama City for another week with the final preparations before we were under our way. And if you calculate it so far, we have been on board the boat for about a month. We haven't sailed yet a mile. So we were really anxious to finally get going. And then, of course, finally we did start our first leg, which was from Panama, going to Galapagos Islands. And what made this start of the journey, what made it so much more interesting, was the fact that when we started, from the 5 of us, there was only one person on board who actually knew how to sail. That was Andreas. The rest of us were there for the first time, like, I wonder what this does. But we learned very quickly. It's not really rocket science, and then of course Andreas had sailed the boat on his own as well, so he was very, very confident to have the extra deck hands. Now, this was the first leg, so to speak. It was 7 days sailing from Panama to Galapagos Islands, and then we arrived, of course, to our next destination. Life is mighty fine. Now, Galapagos Islands, of course, are a very known destination around the world, and we were very much looking forward to get there. For all of us on board, we were, myself included, quite, in lack of better wording, nature enthusiasts, if you will. Personally, it's something I really strive to do. I really enjoy going to nature. I enjoy hiking. I grew up in the countryside. I think I might have mentioned that earlier, but I grew up with farming and with forestry in about 10 miles away from the city, and the city was with 13,000 people. So not a big metropolitan by its own default. Anyway, so I'm very accustomed to being in nature, and it's something I enjoy doing. On my vacations, I normally tend to go to the woods for 6 to 7 days, and I'm doing hiking either by myself or with my friends. And a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to climb the Mount Kilimanjaro, which was another 7-day hike. A completely different story, but of course gives you the idea of the things that I enjoy doing. So arriving to Galapagos Islands was a really big thing for not just myself, but everybody I shared the boat with. For Galapagos, of course, is known very, very much from the extensive wildlife, both on land and in the sea or in the ocean. And the wildlife itself, what makes it so peculiar is that because it's so protected, they're not afraid of you. And that's a curious thing, because we are accustomed that when people come around, animals, they run away. This time they come and give you a high five. It's what's happening. But so it was very curious, very exciting. We very much enjoyed Galapagos Islands, and I do want to show you another video with the new friends that we made. Now this first fella is called a blue-footed booby. Now it wobbles when it walks, completely blue feet, one of the trademarks, if you will, of Galapagos Islands. Lots of sea lions, very friendly as well. They're swimming with the local kids in a saltwater pool here, and they sound great. Now imagine that about 300 times when they're all on the beach. Now the sea lions, they were very, somewhat clumsy on land, but once in the sea, they were the most agile creatures you could ever meet. And the young ones, especially like here, they would come and they would play with you and follow you around very similarly than a puppy would do. And it was quite curious, of course, because they would follow you on the beach, in the sea, and on the water. Lots of crabs, hermit crabs. You have the red shell crabs covering the beach rocks. Pink flamingos can be found from there, along with the lava lizards, very small lizards, but with very bright colors. Then you have the biggest landmark, if you will, the Galapagos giant land tortoises. Now, this friend of ours is not too giant yet. It's about 2 weeks old, but when it gets bigger, it's about the size of the chair that you're sitting on, so big creatures. But they're quite slow, so when I filmed it, I had to kind of, get going with it. Now, what's an iguana? The only iguana that can dive down to about 10 meters, it's about 30 feet to go on feet. You have the different birds with the big pelicans. You have the big frigate birds as well with the big red pouches in front of them during the mating season. Now, lots of sea life. You have the penguins. It's a very blurry, but there's a couple of penguins over here. And the sea lions, they were so friendly indeed that if you did not block the back of your boat, they would come and sunbathe there, then come inside, give you that high five, and ask for food. Literally. Until you politely ask them to exit the vessel, of course. And there they go. Had fun though, had fun. Now, Galapagos Islands, you have find great experience with animals, great diving opportunities, including free diving, of course, which we did do in majority of the time was free diving. If you do go to Galapagos Islands, it is truly a spectacular experience if you enjoy nature. Very, very unique destination. I would personally go back there as well. For we did spend 3 weeks over there, and it still felt that, well, we could still spend another 3 weeks at least. Now, Galapagos Islands, I do want to mention one more specific thing about it. Of course, it is known for many by Charles Darwin. Now, Charles Darwin, of course, came there when he was 24 years old on his voyages around the world with MS Bucco, which was about a year-and-a-half voyage. From that voyage, he spent only 2 weeks in the islands, and then based on that visit and, of course, extensive research after that, he did come up with the book, which is quite, I would say very known, around the world, called The Origin of Species by the Natural Means of Selection. And it is a very, very important, of course, book of evolution, and in most part of the world, it is the most accepted evolutionary theory out there as well. If you do go to Galapagos Islands, you can find lots of more information about his research and about physically what he was doing on the islands when comparing the different birds and the evolution of them. Then after Galapagos Islands, we started with what we called the crossing. Now, we call it the crossing because of ship terminology. Like this cruise is a crossing, meaning, of course, that we are crossing the Atlantic Ocean. But in this case, we called it the crossing because it was about to be the longest time at sea for the whole journey. And this was going to be from Galapagos Islands from here till the Marquesas Islands, roughly in here. Now, on this cruise, of course, the longest time at sea has been this 5 days that we've now had, the fifth one now. Right now, we are trying to do our very best to keep you entertained and to have things to do. Now, for us, on that vessel, on that space, that distance that we did is approximately the same distance as crossing the Atlantic Ocean, about 3,000 nautical miles. But for us, it took 21 days. So three weeks at sea, and you become very good at improvising activities. Yes, those trivias become very popular there as well, even with the 5 of us. Anyway, so it was the longest time at sea, and then we arrived to the Marquesas Islands, which was our first truly tropical destination of the Pacific. And the first thing that we thought when we arrived to the first port of call, Fatuhiva, was that, thank goodness, the GPS worked. For 3 weeks, we're staring on this small little screen, trusting our life with it. So yeah, it was nice to see that it really worked, and we, of course, arrived first to Fatuhiva. We had, of course, other means of navigation as well, but that was the main one. Now, we arrived first to Fatuhiva, then to Hivaoa and Nukuhiva, which are the names of the different islands. And the islands themselves were very original from the cultural perspective, but also when it comes to geology, the islands themselves, they were not very big in size, but they were very tall. So you'd have lots of peaks, very lush rainforest over there, and they were very, very prominent with the landscape. But there's one more thing I do want to mention when it comes to the Marquesas Islands, for this was the first connection that we had to the Polynesian culture, and first true immersion of their lifestyle and the ways of living as well. And there was one particular thing I do want to mention about, which I found quite curious, for it was something that I had learned to be differently in the world, and then I arrived to the islands, and it was something new. To open this up a little bit, the way I believe that our opinions, my opinions have been formed, of course, are based on my environment, right? My opinions of life and world are based on information that I receive. So when I was growing up in Finland, in a small town countryside, my values of the world were based on my parents' values, my friends, my educational system, the cultural values, and of course the media, wherever I would get information. Internet at the time was not that prominent. So I formed this image of the world based on the knowledge that I had. And then of course it was only after I started traveling that I started realizing that many of those things that I considered to be true, not just to me and my society, but the world, I had to adjust those based on the new information that I got from different cultures and the ways of living, that we all have a little differences here and there. And it's a long introduction to a very simple topic. And it's a topic that it seems that nowadays still everybody has an opinion with, and I had a very strong opinion about that, mainly because of the opinion and values of my parents. Now, very long introduction to a very simple topic: tattoos. Tattoos, yeah, it divides always opinions. It depending, of course, where in the world you come from, which generation you're with, but everybody has an opinion from it. Now, from my perspective, the way my parents saw the matter of tattoos was not very positive. The way I grew up was that there's people with tattoos, especially with extensive tattoos, there would be something wrong about it, something inherently negative about it. And this is, of course, I would inherit my parents' values. And it wasn't until I started traveling, of course, and I guess the generations changed as well with the attitude toward tattoos. But once I started traveling, I started, of course, understanding that no, this was values of my parents, and I inherit them, not necessarily the way the world functions. For when I came to Marquesian Islands, I'm sure many of you know about this, but within the culture, every single person have tattoos. No matter who you are, you have tattoos. The young boys, they'll get the first tattoos at the age of 18. They accumulate full sleeves, frontal, back, facial tattoos. The ladies will have the behind-the-ear tattoos for marital status. Everybody had tattoos. If you did not have one, you were the of the village. You know? So I come over here with my mentality of the world, and suddenly I see a culture and its surroundings, and I had to change my perspective and understand that it was just from back home, not the world. And in order to celebrate their culture, their ways of living, and our newly founded understanding, we felt that it was only appropriate to do what they do. So we end up having tattoos from there. And what we found is a local artist. And what you can see over here is Martin having a manta ray tattoo to his shoulder. I carry very proudly a sea turtle on my forearm. And I'm really proud of it, for it tells the story. It's a permanent mark of the journey. And furthermore, it reminds me of many things that I just explained. It reminds me of my limitations when it comes to understanding the world. And I think that is one of the driving forces of mine, that I accept those, and I try to be open to whatever I learn from the travels. Anyway, I get a bit passionate about that. I'm just going to move on. Sorry? Mother loves it. She heard the story a few times. No, actually, I've been able to change my mother's perspective on many things when it comes to performing, playing guitar and singing on the streets, which I did quite a lot, having tattoos, traveling around. Anyway, she's learned a lot as well, and she's very open for it. Good for both of you. Very good. Now, moving on. Next up, I do want to talk about the Tuomotus Atolls, which was our next destination, a beautiful destination. But I do want to ask, by a round of applause, how many of you have heard or know what an atoll is? Part of us. Okay, I would say about half. Very good. No, I must say, when I arrived to an atoll, I did not know what an atoll was. I thought it was an island, but it was, of course, completely different geological formation, which generally this is an example of it. So atoll would be on a circular shape. Many of them are from volcanic nature, but essentially you'd have the crater or the lagoon right here in between, and then land mass would be formed with coral reef and sand essentially from that. So the elevation is very low on these islands, but they are atolls, and they are absolutely stunning. Now, Tuamotu's atolls, they are the largest atoll group in the whole world, with 77 atolls and 1 island in the whole group. And wherever we went there's a couple of atolls we went to, every single picture we took felt like having a postcard. And, you could send that or sell that to somebody because it was absolutely stunning. And actually, one of the evenings, there was something curious, which is going to be in the following picture, and there was 2 full moons, and we captured them both. All right, you found the other one, good. Yeah, there was one in the sky, and Martin burned his towel. Has nothing to do with anything, I'm just seeing if you're still awake. Very good, you seem to be. Now, what I actually really wanted to talk about, though, is diving. Now, diving is something that we did, of course, constantly. We're constantly by the water, on the water, or in the water. Mainly we did free diving, some snorkeling, and some scuba diving as well. And the Tuamotu's atolls, they are considered one of the greatest destinations for diving in the whole world. And I do want to share you quickly a little video of what we saw underneath the water. This is Whakarava, the first atoll we went to. We saw dolphins again. This time we were in the water with them. We saw lots of spotted eagle rays all around the place. Then you see, the dolphins, again, wild dolphins, they are curious. They will come by you, and they will, especially if you're diving with them. If you ask me, the most majestic creature, manta rays, can be found from there. You have the big schools of fish, which is curious. When you free dive, of course, you're holding your breath and you are diving into the school. The school opens and then closes behind you. So suddenly you are there holding your breath, being in control of your body while you have all these fish around you. It truly is a magical thing. Now, sharks, lots of sharks. Mainly reef sharks. No danger there. There are bull and tiger sharks in the area as well, but from reef sharks, there's absolutely no danger. They had about the place where they call the wall of sharks, about 300 of them in a circular motion. Now here's a personal experience of mine when freediving with the manta rays, and I have one of them coming straight at me with its mouth open. Now, it's a big creature, folks. It's about 4 meters wingspan. That's about 12 feet. I could easily fit into the mouth, easily. But, of course, it wasn't interested in me. It just swayed away. But having anything that large coming straight at you with its mouth open underneath the water is not a comfortable feeling. No, you come out shaking from it. Now, when we did the shark dive, the wall of sharks, we were quite lucky as well, for it happened to be a grouper mating season. And what you can see here is grouper fish, and they are here for the mating season, and they're swaying with the water, with no exaggeration, tens of thousands of them, and they would not move. So when we were diving by them, we had to physically move them, and they would then take the place behind us. Amazing dance what they performed. You had lots of the coral fish with the smaller ones. You had the large ones, of course, as well, which example is this humphead fish with big lips, we called it. And also they had something, they called this one Napoleon fish, which was a pet fish, a wild fish, that came around people and allowed them to pet it. I must say, a behavior of a fish I haven't encountered anywhere else. Then, of course, we have the turtles. Now, we would see the turtles all around, very peaceful, beautiful creatures, different shapes and styles and types. But what I'd really like you to see in this final few pictures is the sheer color of the reef and the coral, the way it should look like when it's live and vivid. It is truly tremendous, something out of this world, literally, and it's something I recommend to go and see while you still have a chance. And the reason why I say that, I'm sure many of you are aware of this one, but around the world, more and more coral and reef are unfortunately going extinct. With the water levels rising, the sea temperatures rising as well with the global warming, we are seeing more and more of the marine life, along with, of course, with wildlife as well disappearing. There's a huge patch, for example, Great Barrier Reef. Anybody from Australia? A few of you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this huge patch in the Great Barrier Reef, if I remember right, about 800 kilometers, from which approximately 80-90% has already been bleached because of the rising temperatures. And it's been told as well that they are bleached over so that there's no return. And it's such a shame, of course, and we are seeing this all around the world. When it comes to atolls themselves, with the rising water levels, there's not much level to rise. These atolls, there's up to 1.5 meters. That's about 5 feet, the highest elevation. with even little rising sea levels, they will become uninhabitable. When we were there 7 years ago, they were saying they were estimating that in about next 40 years, the atolls will no longer be habitable because of the changing levels. Nowadays, the progression has been more progressive, meaning that they are estimating even shorter time than that, and many of the islands have already, or the atolls have already become inhabitable because of that. It's a shame to see. They are a beautiful location. If you ever have an opportunity still, I would highly recommend to see them, for they are truly a tremendous destination. Now, a quick other thing I do want to mention from the atolls, we went to another one called Tuau, and I want to show you a quick video with a song which I believe you might recognize. It's a bit dark, but you might recognize the song. Now, of course, happy birthday, Sidoni. Now, the reason why I'm showing this little video is that when we came to Tuau, we encountered something that we were always looking for, and something we encountered for many of the locations, which was, of course, immersion to the local culture and the people. And very often that we came to the islands, it wasn't more than a day or two with the locals that they would already be inviting us to their homes so that they could feed us and they take care of us. And this is something we saw not just in Tuau, but all around the Pacific. And especially, I remember from Fiji, they used to have a saying, that was, I believe they still do, that when you come to the islands, you arrive as a stranger, but then you leave as a friend. And we really felt this. And as mentioned, this was what we were looking for. For many of us from on board, from the crew, we work in the tourism industry. So when we are traveling, we often want to find the originality. We want to find the cultures, to learn from them, to see how they do things. And in situations like this, we did find from all around the Pacific, and they were always our preference if they were available. Then moving on. Coming to our next destination toward the halfway of the journey. Now, arriving to Society Islands. Now, in Society Islands, we went to several of the islands, but first of all, we came to Papeete in Tahiti, which is the capital of French Polynesia. And over here, we had what we call the crew change. I mentioned about this in the very beginning of the presentation. But this meant that Martin, Elizabeth, and Jacob, they flew back home to Norway and then got replaced by Einar and Kjersti, which was, of course, quite a change of the dynamics on board. As you can imagine, with 5 people on board, at this point we had been sailing for 4 months, with all the conversations, the experiences, I feel that I knew better some of these people than some of my siblings. So to have them going very abruptly and got replaced with completely new strangers was quite a change, as mentioned, and a bit of a tough cookie to bite. But of course, equally, Einar and Kjersti were equally great as people, but the transition was emotional, I would say. Now, after Tahiti, with all the provisioning and the preparation in there that we continued for the journey, we went to Moorea and Taha, which are sister islands to Tahiti. Some of our cruise ships, I believe, go to these islands as well when we cross the Pacific. Beautiful locations. We visited a couple of them for a few times. And after that, we arrived to an island that I believe that everybody has heard of. So, by a round of applause, how many of you have heard of Bora Bora? Oh, all right. Fantastic. That's pretty much everybody. Fantastic. And for that very reason, we decided not to go there. It's a true story. We did, because again, like I mentioned, we were not looking for the touristic locations. There were so many other islands to enjoy, so we decided that we're going to go there. But what happened was that once we were passing by Bora Bora, we learned that there was a friend boat of ours, two brothers, actually twins from Pennsylvania, I want to say. They were turning 25, their birthday party. We got to know them earlier in the sailing trip, and as we were passing by, we learned that they want to have their birthday party on our boat. because we had a bigger boat. So for this reason, the true story, for this reason we came by to Bora Bora, and we had them over and some of our other friends for a celebration. And then the following morning, nice and early, up, I don't know, 3 p.m. when we finally woke up, we come out from below the decks and we look around and we see this gorgeous island in front of us. And we think that, well, you know what, we are here by Bora Bora, let's go and take a look. And very happy, very lucky we were that we did, for Bora Bora truly ended up being as beautiful as its reputation states. What you can see here on the video is the view from the top of Bora Bora. There's two peaks that's in the center of the island, and you can see this beautiful panoramic view of the gorgeous island. And furthermore, Bora Bora, it was very friendly. It was not as touristic, so to speak, as we were expecting. And nowadays, I must say, I find myself recommending Bora Bora. For Bora Bora, as I said, beautiful first of all, but very easy access as well. You can fly on in, you can take a boat from there if you want. So it really is a nice location and destination from the Pacific. Now, also in Bora Bora, what happened that we got a new crew member. So I can mention briefly at the beginning of the presentation, but Peter over here on the right-hand side, with myself, Shesti, Einar, and Andreas. So Peter joined us in Bora Bora, and he did something called Boat Hub, which meant that he was doing essentially the same thing we were doing. He was crew membering on another somebody else's boat, but once he arrived to to Bora Bora, he could no longer continue with the boat and had to find another ride. Now, we got to know him during the hike to top of Bora Bora, and we liked the guy, and when he approached us with the topic that could he join us for the crew for the rest of the journey, we said, well, we have the space, come on in. And so therefore Peter joined us for the rest of the journey. And he was a great addition to our small little crew. At the time, he was 61 years old. He was retired. He was a banker from Canada, to be more precise. And I said, a great addition to our small little crew with wealth of experience. But I must say, in all of honesty, I must say that Peter over here is still, I would say, still up to date. It's the single reason for me personally that I no longer eat curry. Peter was our chef as well, and he really enjoyed curry. It was literally every single thing was with curry this, curry that, and curry no longer for me. At the time we had to tell him that you know that there are other spices in the world, right? No, Peter was a great guy. In furthermore honesty, Peter had a great influence on me personally as well. For he was something called a life coach back home, along with his other duties, and we had extensive conversations about many topics on this journey. And I really do feel I learned a lot from his life experience. And what I found very curious, that he claimed the same about us. From the four of us, he said that, well, this is the way I live my life. I learn from everybody regardless, and he claimed that he learned a lot from how we did things. And I think this exchange of information, regardless of your background and where you are in life, it really created the community that we had on board. Regardless, so Peter over here said, lots of learning. Moving on. Next up, a little message from the captain.
Today is another beautiful sunny day here on African Innovation. We have the sails up, and we're enjoying ourselves. I go for a little walk up here front so you can see just what not to do when you are in the middle of the Pacific. Sharks everywhere, it's dangerous, you don't want to do this. In general, lying in the water is not a good feeling. There are sharks around, and it could be dangerous, but we persevere. That was a close call.
So after a little safety tip from our captain, do not fall overboard unless there's a rope behind you. We arrived to our next destination called Nui. Now, Nui is one of the not-so-famous locations from the Pacific, but for those of you who don't know it as the Rock of Pacific quite often. It is part of New Zealand officially, but claims to be independent. And Rock of Pacific comes from the fact that from the formation of the island, it's very rocky by its nature, forming lots of caves, different chasms, lots of cave diving opportunities and exploration. But the one thing I do want to mention from here is actually based on this picture. Now, what you can see over here is a catamaran. It's a catamaran Anna. but there's something badly wrong with her. It looks strange, doesn't it? What's wrong with Anna? It's split. It's not split. It's actually intact still. The mast might not be there. Anybody? Very good. It is upside down. What you can see in the picture is, of course, the bottom part of Anna. What happened to Anna was that it was on its way from New Zealand to Nui, and on its way it encountered a sudden squall of winds that went from 18 knots to 60 knots suddenly, and they were not prepared for that with the two of them, and the boat capsized, and luckily the two they survived after staying about 48 hours on top of what you see on the boat. They were rescued by a cargo ship. But the reason why this played part in our journey was the fact that Catamaran Anna was on its way to Nui to assist with the whale research team. Now, the team was already there, but now without Anna, they could not conduct their research. So what they were doing, they were going from boat to boat, asking if they could crew those boats and to conduct their research. And of course, as we arrived there and we had a little bit bigger boat, they came to us as well and asked if we could continue the research. And of course, we said yes. What amazing opportunity, not only to learn about their line of work and marine biology, but furthermore to go around the islands and to research the humpback whales. It was their migration season at the time. And we saw many of them around, but to be honest, we saw whales often. We had one breaching out from the water no more than 10 meters away. It's about 30 feet away from the boat. So seeing them, always special, but not the most special for us. But what was of course the knowledge and the learning, excuse me, but also the fact that they came on board with equipment. And what you can see over here in the picture is Chesty with a headset by her ears, going into a recording device and then into a hydrophone that is in the water. And of course they were recording the whales, and this is what Chesty is listening. Now, I must say I personally heard many a times whale recordings for such thing. I'm sure many of you have as well. But what was so special over here was the fact that we knew that the whale was there. It was singing no more than a mile away from where we were at. And every single person that put that headset on their ears did very similar thing that many of you just did. First of all, they started smiling. And furthermore, they started laughing out loud, myself included. And we were talking about this afterwards. What was it like? You were just listening, so to speak, just listening to the whale, and suddenly you had this urge to laugh, not just smile, but to laugh out loud. It happened to every single one, and we were trying to put our finger to it. We really couldn't do it, but we couldn't find that one thing other than the fact that you felt happy. That's it. You felt happy and you felt somehow connected to the surroundings and the world at the same time, and you felt that connection. And whether the connection is imaginary or not, I wouldn't claim on that. But for us, it felt real, and therefore we claimed it. But it was very curious phenomena, so to speak, that feeling of happiness from just being, feeling of being part, I guess. Now, after Nui, we continued our journey to our next destination, which is rather famous as well. The island group of Fiji. By a round of applause, have you heard of Fiji? I thought you might guess what we did. Yeah, we skipped it. Again, same thing, same actually deal, same like Bora Bora. Fiji, very known as a touristic destination, especially the main island and the capital. And we already were rushing a little bit, so we did decide not to go there. And we stuck to the decision. And we were coming toward Fiji, where you have Suva here, capital, in the main island. And we were passing by Ogialevu, which is right over here, a beautiful island. And as we were passing by it on our way to our next destination, what took place was that we started facing some bad weather. Now, we had bad weather and stormy weather several times before, and like always, you just deal with it. You know, you find a way and you deal with it. That's what you do. But in here, it was a little bit different, for the storm was getting worse, and we were starting to get worried about our capabilities of navigating through it. And the other option was, because there was an option, of course, we were sailing right by the island, we go in and shelter. But the problem was that without the immigration done, like any country you come to, of course, you have to do the immigration. We did it with every single island. On this cruise, of course, we have done the immigration and on your behalf, but everybody has done the immigration upon arriving to the country. We were no exception. So without that done, we would be essentially arriving illegally to the country. Now, the chances were that, yes, they would understand, but the chances were that they would not as well. So it was a decision to be made. And Captain went down to his quarters for a little bit, just to ponder upon it, came back up and said that, well, the one thing we cannot take chances with is our safety, and we are concerned, so we are going to go by the island, keep very low profile and shelter, and we do our very best not to try to attract attention. You know what happens when you try not to attract it. Yep, you kind of get it all. So we came by the island, and I literally would not be more than 15 minutes after we anchored by the island, and there's a boat that comes approaching to us. And we think, like before, that this is the officials. They come for the papers. We don't have them. That's potentially the end of the journey. But no, it was just a local fisherman that saw us coming in and came to say hi, first of all, and invite us to visit their village. Which then we declined because we're still thinking that there might be paperwork, so to speak, to be done. So we declined it. Then comes the second boat, different people. The third boat, the fourth boat, different people, very curious, coming to say hi. Do you want to come and see our village? Everybody asking, what's going on? Well, no, we don't want to. And then we started laughing. We got relaxed a little bit more. We started laughing that granted, the next boat that comes by will be filled with the Polynesian women, and they will come and drag us Scandinavians in for whatever reason. And then, of course, the next boat was filled with the women. And children, and including the chief's daughter, who personally came to extend the invitation from the chief of the village to come and visit. And we felt at this point that it would be already rude not to take the invitation, so we took it. And we were very happy and lucky that we did. For we learned on our way there, when we met with the locals and with the children were very excited about us, we learned the reason for this to be the fact that the island is not visited. Because of the location of it, no more than 2 to 3 boats per year come by. So it's a very rare occasion. And the village itself had 90 people living in it, and it's a very, very unique community by its own default. So we came there, we learned more about their ways of living. We were first escorted, very dark picture, but this is what they called the clubhouse. Only men were allowed over there. And this is where we had to first come in and give a little gift of kava for them. And then after a ceremony of little singing, dancing, and chiming, the chief went, and that was the permission, essentially. And then we were able to spend the next couple of days in the village. And it was very unique, I must say, that the way the culture functioned in that small community, so isolated but still so connected. I was very curious about the education system. I got to look into that. Many stories to share from this experience, but I'm going to share one which I felt was the most curious one. And this was again about perception of the world, if you will. Now, being from Finland, being on the complete other side of the world, literally, on an island that does not get visited, I thought that maybe I'm the first one. Maybe I'm the first one for my country. I wanted to find out. So I went ahead and I asked the chief of the daughter, who you see here in the picture, I went and asked her, when was the last time, starting it easy, that you had people who came from Europe, Europeans that came by? To which she replied that no, it was long ago. It was maybe a year ago that there was a boat that came from Australia. Australia. That's a whole different continent, right? Back in home, you had the European continent in the middle of the map. Australia is all the way in the bottom part. Different people, culture, language, everything. How could she make such a big mistake? So I thought maybe she's not educated or something. But I wanted to find out. So I waited for a little bit and went to ask again, that when is the last time that you had people, from European continent, from the European countries that came by? And she answered me in a way that, well, she was very educated, of course, that the education system was excellent what they had. But she told me that, well, I just told you, she didn't snap her finger, but I just told you that there was a boat about a year ago that came from Australia. And I was puzzled. This is not the way I've learned the world. What's going on here? So I had to look into it, and I found something truly interesting. And let's see if you follow. It's a little hard at first. According to them, everybody from Europe is European. All right? Everybody from Europe is European. I see a few of you nodding. It takes a while to understand this. The reason for it is that when we look at history, the way I see it, when we look at history, we remember only about 150 years, maybe 200 if you're lucky. Right? Everybody from Europe is European. It's been only, 500 years? That Europeans came to, for example, to the Americas, both sides, colonized it, made the cultures essentially what we know nowadays as very strong individual cultures and countries, and what we define as North and South America and the countries. It's been only 200 years that Europeans did the same thing to Australia, essentially creating a culture over there from what it used to be and to what we nowadays recognize as Australia, as a continent, as a people, as a culture, as a way of living. It's been in their region for thousands of years that they've had their very same culture in the same region, same islands. So from their perspective, all of us, when we ask Westerners and Europeans, all of us are the same. There's no difference to it. It doesn't matter how long ago your ancestors came from somewhere, you are from where you're from. So therefore, they would see us all the same. And it furthermore inquired my thinking that if they see us all the same, then how come my culture, how come so many of our cultures differentiate us? We see people, we see the world as different. When it comes to individualism, we are in Finland, we are very, very prone to individualism. You're very, very much different, unique the way you are. And I find this for many countries that we're turning inside instead of outside. And therefore we concentrate on those differences. When, I don't know from you, but I could imagine that many of you might even agree with me, but when you travel, you meet these people from all around the world, from different cultures, different ways of living, different styles, and the more you meet actually with them, the more you see the similarities. And I know that's what's happening to me for the last 12 years. The more I see people from all around the world, regardless where they are, and I actually meet the people, I see that they are pretty much the same as I am. You know, they want the same thing. They want to be loved. They want to have food. They want to have a shelter. They want to have a job that has a meaning. They want the same thing. So where is that difference that we are striving to? Languages? Well, languages are different, yes. What are languages? Communication. There's so many other ways of communicating, so many more important ways of communicating than languages. So it doesn't really qualify. Even though language dictates behavior, yes, but still not to that extent. So I've been trying to find, from my perspective, the reason for that. And the more I travel, the more people I meet, the more drawn I'm just to the idea that when you look at us in a broad picture, we really are just one, for some reason separated. Anyway, it's something that really I enjoyed as a thought pattern that I learned from them, and I still value to this date very, very, very highly. And it makes me really want to learn more about people and the ways of living, and to see those similarities. Another topic I get a bit passionate about. Yes, sir. She actually spoke good English. Yeah, she spoke in Fiji. They would. Yeah. In French Polynesia, many of the parts we had more sign language than anything else. Because we could say oui baguette for the French, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Next up, at this point we have about 10 minutes left in the whole presentation. I'm just going to quickly move along. Next up, just quickly, we're going to drop by to Vanuatu Island Group, a beautiful island group, and we go here specifically to one of the islands, which is the southernmost of the islands, called Tana. Now, Tana is very known for the many of things, but most of it, I would say, by Mount Yasur, which is a nice and active volcano, and I do want to share with you a quick video to show what we experienced on that volcano in Mount Yasur, or on Mount Yasur, should I say. There we go. A reason for everything. I put a little bit of goofy on the beginning of this video because again, I feel that this is a very cultural perspective of ours. You know, Pacific Island with a volcano actively in it, on it. You celebrate it, you get fed well, and then somebody gets thrown to volcano, right? But of course, the reality of the fact was a little bit different.
Searching for something never comes, never leads to nothing. Nothing satisfies, but I'm getting close. close, closer to the prize at the end of the rope. All night long I dream of the day when it comes around and it's taken away. Leaves me with the feeling that I feel the most. Feel it come to life when I see your ghost.
Hi guys, today is 7th of August. We are in Vanuatu Island, and the island of Tana, which is south of the group. We came for a day excursion to the which is one of the most active locations right in South Pacific. And so far we've had 2 or 3 really big explosions. We're here on the outer rim. We know the danger zone, but not too much. All the rocks that are shooting out of the volcano are landing about, must be 30-40 meters away from us at least, so we're in a good place. So we've had a few really good big explosions from which it's an incredible feeling. You feel the wave first, the shock wave hits you first, and then you see this amazing, enormous explosion of lava and mud just falling out everywhere. I must say, being really frank, this is one of the coolest things I have ever done, with no doubt. I'll just...
And if you open up wide, and if you let me inside, on and on, I got nothing to hide. And don't let it go to waste. I love it, but I hate my taste. When you pull me down, and don't let it go to waste. I love it, but I hate my taste. When keep pulling me down.
Now, Mount Jasur was definitely one of the most exciting destinations of the whole journey. The volcano itself was erupting approximately every 10 to 20 minutes, quite similarly than the geysers were erupting in Iceland. Now, after Vanuatu, we went to New Caledonia for just a brief while. We were there in Numea, but only in Marina due to an engine failure. So we stayed there for about 5 days for the repairments. And then we continued to our final destination, being right here on the bottom corner of the map, being Sydney, Australia. Now, I must say it was quite a party feeling, to be honest, for us, for officially, as we did arrive to the Sydney Harbour Bridge. For myself and Andreas, at this point, the Pacific was officially crossed. But before any good story comes to an end, there needs to be a little bit of drama as well. Drama. Now, what took place? 3 days before we arrived, there was an accident. 8 months of sailing, no problem, and then 3 days before we arrived, an accident took place, and from all the people, of course, it happened to me. And long story short, I was coming to my night shift on that night, and of course, be nighttime. And when I came by, I noticed that as we were sailing with the Jenneker sail, you can see in the picture, I noticed that we used the wrong rope, the short rope on the starboard side. Not a big deal. I'll just take my tea and crackers first, and then I'll change it, as I always did the tea. And during that time, the winds actually picked up, and as I came to sit down with my tea, I noticed that the sail started collapsing from the starboard side. Normal, you have to deal with it quickly with high winds. So what I started doing was to fixing that problem, which there are 4 or 5 different ways you can do that, but the most quickest way is to get the sail higher so that it reaches the wind. And to do that, you have to give more rope for the sail. And I did that, but the problem was I had the short rope. I ran out of it. And then at that moment, I did my mistake, and I did something I had done before, but what I didn't realize, of course, in the situation, I had done it with lower winds. So I took the rope from the safety. That's when everything goes wrong, right? So I took the rope from the safety, so to speak, and I took one of the safety rounds. You normally run it 3 or 4 times around the winch. So I took one of those out, so I gave that extra half a meter. Not much, but just enough. So I gave that the height for the sail, and the sail opened up. Perfect. Or it would have been, unless I would have been holding the whole full power of the sail with these bad boys. And I know they're impressive, but they're not that impressive. No. So, of course, I was holding the full force of the sail, and quickly my hand got junked in right between the rope and the winch for a very brief moment, but enough to do what you can see here in the picture. Luckily, I kept my fingers, but 2 of my nails popped off straight away, and I got left with a bone sticking out from my finger for 3 days. Sorry to be graphic, by the way. But luckily, Shesti was actually a nurse, so we were able to treat it on board. And once we arrived to Australia, I got into surgery straight away. And, the nail never really grew back properly, and the finger is a bit crooked, but I can still play guitar and do everything. And I was left with a good story. So it was kind of worth it. Now, as a final part, just a couple of little things. I do want to go through a quick summary of the journey and then what I feel that I learned from it. Now, we went to 22 different islands on an area of 10 different countries, traveled about 9,000 nautical miles. To put that in perspective, around the world in the equator is about 20,000. So it's roughly half the world. 10 weeks was the actual sailing time, and the rest of it we spent in the different islands. Longest time at sea was the 21 days we spoke about, and the total expenses for all of us was about $35,000, to which all it came to me, including everything, for this journey per month, I spent $1,400. Doesn't sound too much, does it? No, absolutely. Now, this was something that surprised me, that this includes everything with the flights and the food and the diesel, maintenance, going out, having fun, renting cars, everything, $1,400. It's something that surprised me. It's something that I didn't realize it could be possible. Before I learned about this journey of sailing, I never even dared to dream about it, to be honest. I had many other dreams, and I still of course, do, but sailing was one of those things that I thought is not for me. For the reason that it's for those people who had the privilege, the money, the time, and these things that I don't have. So I stopped myself doing it before I even started, to be honest. And it wasn't until I actually had a chance to do it and to go through that I realized that through all the people I met, that it had nothing to do with money. Had nothing to do with privilege, had nothing to do with time per se, and everything to do with people and the decisions that people make. Now, we met people from all walks of life. We met, the youngest sailor was 1 year old, literally. And the oldest one was 81-year-old solo sailing around the world. And everything in between. You would have the couples, the friends, the groups, the charters, the lovers, everything from different walks of life. And really what I felt was that the only one thing that really brought them together was the mentality of life. And the fact that they allowed themselves to dream and to make that decision. And because of that decision, things came forward. For me, it was 9 months. As from the decision to make it happen. Many of the people, it was years, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. Some people built their boat and then went sailing. But they decided to do so, and then they draw their life towards it. And what I find nowadays, and in general, that if and when we have dreams, the easiest thing to do is to find the reason to not to do them, right? It can be right there. It can be anything. It can be your house. It can be your mortgage. It can be your car. It can be your loved ones. It can be your family. It can be your job. It can be all of these excuses why not to do it without or giving yourself the permission of not to even dream about it. That's fine. I cannot do it. But once you really want to do something and actually make the decision to it, within time, one drives your life toward that. And this is something I spent lots of time with Peter, per se. As I said, he was 61-year-old at the time, and we talked about the decision-making and about what drives people to do things, regardless of which walk of life they are in. And his perspective was very strongly to it that it is the trusting in your own decisions and following them through. And I truly do believe that. And when you find those different reasons of why not to do it, there's so many of them. But to make the decision of to do them, you need only one, and then it comes to be. And I must say, for me personally, again, I stumbled upon this journey. It was a sheer luck that I came by it. But every other journey after that has not been. Meaning being, of course, that I feel the things that I learned from it, not just about the sailing and the world, but the mentality of decision-making and the way of seeing those through has really brought me to where I am nowadays, and not just meaning here being as a cruise director, but who I am as a person. So it really was a definitive moment of my life on this journey. But talking of which, I do want to mention a couple last things. I know we can a little bit longer, but I mentioned in the very beginning of the presentation that my greatest passion in life is traveling and the learning that I get from it. And just to briefly mention about what I felt that I personally learned. How to sail, First thing, practical skill. I feel very confident now with the skill. I can take a boat from place A to place B. But the second thing I think is the greatest one, the time that you have to spend with yourself. You know, when you're sailing, there's not that many things to do on board. You know, because you sail, you do maintenance, you cook, you clean, you have a conversation, read a book, and then you have, 22 more hours per day? Something like that. So you have lots of time. What do you do with all of that time? Well, you think, right? What do you think about? You think about the same things you always do. You think about those things that essentially are out of yourself. You think about the people you love. You think about your asset, your house, your mortgage, your career, your car, your cat, some of you. So essentially, there's these things that we think about. But when you have so much time, you think of them, there's no other ways really to get your time by, so you think about the same things over and over and over again till you get bored, right? I call it the glorious boredom. I love boredom. From boredom spawns creation, because when you're bored, you start creating. And what happened to us was that once we hit that boredom, we started dreaming. We started creating. We started sorting out our life, whether it needs to be sorted out or not. We started doing that, and we started answering the questions that we might have had. For me personally, at this point of life, I was in a crossroad, what to do, where to go. I had quit Royal Caribbean at the time. I was, again, literally adrift, so to speak. That was a good one. And so I was in this moment of what to do next. And through this time, I felt that I answered all of those questions. I didn't need to go and read all the books and everything. I just had to give the time for myself to ponder upon it. And because of this time, I could really, truly stand here in front of all of you and say that I think I do know what I want. I know where I want to go. And furthermore, I think I know how to get there. And that, I think, really strongly, that comes from the time we have. And for me, nature works. For me, the quietness is the big thing. To get bored and be quiet, and let your mind do its job, so to speak. And nowadays, I feel that many of us are very, very, very attached to information from elsewhere. Attached, whether it's come to media, movies, radio, people's opinions, news, whoever you listen, is of course the opinions you get, and they affect the way you think about yourself and the world. At the moment you don't have that, suddenly it feels uncomfortable. The silence. Oh, I need to think now for myself. And for me, that is truly the biggest thing. When you have that time to think for yourself and to see for yourself, and through that you really, at least for me, I learn. Now, a couple other things to mention. Social challenge, 5 people, about the size of this stage, 8 months. You think we never crashed? Rainbows and butterflies throughout the whole journey. Smooth seas. No, we crashed several times. We had never had fist fights, never nothing like that, but big arguments on board. It was very uncomfortable at the times because everybody's strong, different personality. But the beauty of it is when you are in such a tight community, an environment, there's no way out of it. You have to find a solution. And that's, like I said, the best part of it. You have to lean forward and be leaned upon to find the solution, and you become a really good problem solver and a very patient person as well. And I find myself that nowadays the way I see the world a little bit is that people have a tendency of making those small little things that don't really matter, and they're blowing them out of proportions and often ruining their day in the progress of doing so. When if you have a choice, and I believe you always have the choice, you can just skip that part. If it doesn't matter, just don't matter about it. Just concentrate on the big things and concentrate on being happy. And to be honest, that is my driving force. I have that choice, and I take it, and I execute that choice of choosing to be happy. And of course, I do take time to take care of things and business, but I don't take unnecessary time to ponder upon the small things. And finally, from all of this, while catching big mahi-mahis, it leaves you with stories to tell. And those stories are important. I have learned so much in my short life about stories, and I know from all of you right here at the moment, there's so many stories out there, and I would love to hear more about them and learn from you as well. But thank you for joining in this afternoon to hear about my story. And as a very final thing, I know I again went longer than I expected, but I do want to take the last 2 minutes of your time and to take you one last time the South Pacific with this final video. And then if you have any questions, I'll be right here behind as well.
you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, and the tears come streaming down your face, when you lose something you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste. Could it be worse? Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. And high up above or down below, when you're too in love to let it go. But if you never try, you'll never know just what you were. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you.
Thank you very much, everybody.